I know, I'm a piece of shit. We're supposed to start the Tuesday, Thursday streams this week. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. My grandpa had emergency surgery on Tuesday. They had sent him to the ER on Monday, so I was been staying over at my grandmother's house at night, coming back here, working during the day, going back over there. He is good. His intestine had some issues where it was like overlapping on itself and nothing was getting through. So he was really sick and he couldn't eat and he was just throwing up like green bile. Like grandma said it was like the fucking Exorcist or whatever, but he's good now. They fixed that. It was a small incision that they had to make. He was out of it yesterday. They actually sent him home yesterday. I didn't think they were going to send him home until today, but they sent him home yesterday. He was kind of out of it this morning. He was much better. Still walking very, very slow. He's got to walk with a walker right now just because his body is weak, but in a couple days he'll be back to normal. His mind's still sharp as a tack, so everything is good there. I'm just kind of tired. I'm just kind of worn out from doing all this stuff. So next week we'll start the streams. If you're mad, I really don't care because it's just free streams unless you're a member, and then I apologize to you because you're an awesome member of the channel. But I did want to give you guys a little something, so I figure we'll tell a story. We'll tell the story about how I got kicked out of Christian summer camp when I was 13 or 14 years old, so somewhere around there. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a devout Christian or anything like that. I do believe in God, Satan, angels, demons, stuff like that. How much of that is actually man-made and how much of that actually exists, I don't really know. And really, you know, you can believe whatever you want. You can be a Muslim, a Jewish person, a devout Christian, an atheist. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I don't understand why society, you have to know if somebody's, you know, what their religion or their religious stance is or what their political stance is. I don't care. That has no bearing on your character as a human to me. I think most people who watch me sort of understand that. You know, live your life. You know, do what makes you happy. Believe what you believe in. I don't care. That's your belief system. But my parents and my grandparents especially, and my parents used to go to church every Sunday. And then we moved to North Carolina. And then church that I used to go to in Connecticut, like my whole family went there or whatever. And I was still friends with a lot of kids from there. You know, I had gone to like preschool at this church and stuff like that. So I'd known some of these kids since I was like, you know, 2-3 years old. And I remember one summer they were like, hey, we're going to this summer camp thing. My buddy Luke, it was pretty much like Luke was like my best friend. And then I became friends with these other two kids who I'll talk about later in the video. Luke's parents, like Luke's dad was like the assistant pastor at the church or something. And so his mom called up my mom and was like, hey, you know, does Sean want to come up for this? You know, it'll be fun. You know, Luke's going, a bunch of other guys from the church are going. And they were like, yeah, sure. So I flew up to Connecticut. I stayed with grandma for like a day or two. And then they dropped me off at the church. And then we took a bus up to this place that was like an hour away. It was on like the Connecticut, Massachusetts line. I don't recall the name of the summer camp or anything like that. But basically, there was probably like 10 or 12 kids that went to this thing from the church that I was affiliated with, I guess, or whatever. And like a lot of them were younger kids, you know, so we didn't really hang out with them. But like the older kids, you know, they were all cool. And like these weren't like normal kids, because a lot of the kids that went to this church were inner city kids. So a lot of them, you know, they were a bit more brass than like, you know, your average church kid was. And that kind of fit my mold because I obviously wasn't a typical, you know, dude that, you know, went to church every Sunday or anything like that. I was kind of, you know, a piece of shit, I guess. So in our group, it was Luke, it was John, who is a Puerto Rican guy, and Nefty, who is also a Puerto Rican guy. Nefty is Puerto Rican. Who would have thunk that? But they were super cool. Those are my homies. They were, you know, Nefty was like the oldest. Nefty was like 16. I was like 13 or 14. John was like 14 or 15. And Luke was my age. Luke was 13 or 14. And so that was like the crew. And we told like the younger kids in the church, we were like, yo, we're not going to hang out with you. You know, we're not gonna be like cool with you, but if anyone fucks with you at this camp, you know, you let us know because we're gonna run this shit, because that's just the mentality we had. And sure enough, you know, we ran that shit. Like, you know, we weren't, most of the people that were going there, and I mean, there were some other, you know, kids from like inner city areas and stuff that, you know, were a little bit more roughneck, but you know, a lot of the people that went there were going for the religious experience. We were going to hang out with the boys and meet some chicks. And that is what we did at this camp. So we got in trouble quite a lot. Basically what they did was when you got there, they put you into different groups with people from different churches. So like 3 or 4 kids from one church would be mixed up with like 3 or 4 kids from another church and 3 or 4 kids from another church. And those would be your bunk people in your cabins or whatever. And you would be given a team name. And basically the churches, you know, what they did was there was probably like, there was a bunch of people there. I want to say there was probably like 12 to 15 different churches there. And they had a competition where like everything was based on competition, you know, basketball, running, you know, fun stuff like sumo wrestling where they had like a big sumo suit and shit like that. Basically stuff like that. And whatever cabin won the all the events at the end, who had the highest score or whatever, they would get to go to a free trip. So like 2 or 3 different churches would get to go to a free trip to like some big youth seminar thing in Springfield, Massachusetts, which spoiler alert, we ended up winning, and I got everyone kicked out of that thing, out of our hotel. I'll tell that story maybe another day. But so we're like, yeah, we're going to win this shit. So, you know, everyone's kind of, you know, getting in with their cliques. They had like a food stand inside where you could buy like candy and sodas and shit and like some other stuff. They gave you 3 meals a day, you know, and you were outside most of the time. So of course, before I even went up there, grandma would have to take me to Macy's and I'd have to get, you know, some nice Mecca, some nice Echo gear. Like that's just what I liked, you know. Fuck you. That's what I liked. I liked Mecca. I liked Echo. If I could wear FUBU, I would have, but I couldn't really pull FUBU off, I feel. But like, you know, it was just the time, man. You know, you gotta have a chain. You know, somebody gave me a chain to wear when I was up there, so you had to have a chain. And so as they're breaking up people into groups, I'm like, hey, you know, I'm actually from out of state. I came up here to hang out with Luke. You know, can you put Luke, myself, Luke, John, and Nefty in a bunk so that way I'm like more comfortable, you know, with people that I know, because I don't really know many people here. And they were like, oh yeah, cool. So they put us in a group with like 2 other groups of people, like 3 or 4 kids. And I mean, the other kids were fine, but we're like, you know, we got into the bunk and we're like, all right, here's the rules. All right, here's the groundwork, homie. Like we run this shit. All right. And since you're affiliated with Mandarin Orange, was the name of our club. Since you're affiliated with Mandarin Orange, you know, anyone gives you any lip, you know, you just let us know. There were some tougher guys, you know, that were out there, but like they didn't roll deep like we did. So, you know, it was what it was. We got in trouble for a bunch of little things pretty much throughout the whole thing. Cussing. Somebody, I think it was Nefty, brought a little boombox and Rough Riders Volume 1. So we would just play that in the little cabin that we were in, and they'd come by like, what is that music? Who's playing that? We're like, oh, it's a Christian rapper, I swear. So yeah, we were wild out or anything, all that shit. But we got in trouble. We got in trouble quite often. Girls, you know, there were girls at this thing and you weren't supposed to like, you know, flirt with them and, you know, try to get up with them, kiss on them and shit. That was one of the reasons I went up there, was to meet girls. And there was this one group of girls from a church in Massachusetts that we called them the Bunnies, because like they were all like hot, you know, for that time. You know, they were all like, you know, between like 14 to 16 at the time, and you know, I was 13 or 14, so you know, it was well within my range there. But they were all hot chicks, so we called them the Bunnies, and they would be like, why do you guys call them the Bunnies? And we're like, oh, don't worry about it, obviously a nod to the Playboy Bunnies. You know, we would hook up with them, fool around with them, get in trouble, this, that, and the other, whatever. But then everything kind of came to a head. And like, you know, we would do like, we would play basketball and shit against other camps, you know, we'd be elbowing them, you know, getting in their faces and shit like that. You know, it just was what it was. So I remember I was going back to the cabin, and Nefty was in the cabin, and Nefty had like this blue, like baby blue Mecca shirt with like yellow Mecca writing on it. That was like, Denver Nuggets colors. And then he had a pair of, yellow and white Air Force Ones. I was like, Nefty, let me get that fit for tonight. And he was like, word. I was like, yeah, dude, let me wear that fit tonight. And he's like, all right. So he let me wear the fit. And I remember him and me and him go out of the cabin. And there's this little fucking kid. He was an annoying kid. All right. He was a real fucking annoying kid. I never liked this kid. I couldn't stand this kid. And so he goes, oh, you guys are gay. I'm sure that YouTube is going to flag this video, but back in during those times, it didn't mean that so-and-so was a homosexual. It meant that you were a bitch, you were a pussy, you were soft or whatever. Like, it didn't mean, what it means today, but whatever. That's what happened in the story. I'm not going to fucking censor it because of YouTube's bullshit. But he's like, oh yeah, you guys are gay. I'm like, what the fuck did you say, bitch? And so I start running after him, and Nefty's like, nah, chill, homie, chill. I'm like, all right. I was like, what's the plan? He was like, don't worry, I got a plan. Hour or two goes by, and we went up to the little commissionary area, bought some candy and snacks, and we're walking back, and he sees the kid going to the bathroom, and like the way the bathroom was there was like all the cabins were like around here, and then right here was the bathroom. And so he's like, yo, he's going to the bathroom. He's like, run to the cabin. So we run to the cabin. Nefty opens up his suitcase, and he's got all these bandanas, because like I guess he was a banger or something. So he's like taking out all these bandanas. He's like, get water. I'm like, okay. So we're pouring water all of his bandanas. I was like, what are we gonna do? He's like, we're gonna towel whip this bitch. I was like, all right. And so we get like 4 or 5 bandanas each in our hands, and we go into the bathroom. I look around, there's no one else in there. I look under a stall, he's in there taking a shit. And I'm like, yo, second stall. He's like, kick that door in. I'm like, all right. So I run up in there, boom, kick the door open. I'm like, surprise, motherfucker. This kid lets out the biggest shriek, and Nefty just runs in there. He's like, bap, just hitting him in the face. I'm hitting him in the body. The kid like goes down. He's like pulling up his pants. He goes down in like a heap on the ground. You can see tears running down his eyes. I start stomping him. Nefty starts stomping him. I'm like, if you ever say anything about me again, motherfucker, I will destroy you. And so we run out of there. We're cracking up. We go back to the bunk, freshen up a little bit, and we go back out. About 20 minutes goes by. They had an intercom system there. You hear, I don't remember Nefty's last name, but you hear him, Sean Long and Nefty, please report to the main office. Sean Long and Nefty, please report to the main office. I'm like, oh shit, dog. I was like, we might have gotten into a little too much shit with this. And he was like, man. He's like, it'll be all right. You're white. They'll give you some lenience. I was like, all right, cool. So we're walking up to the main office, and the youth counselor that was there with our church, he was a very tan man, and his whole face just went ghost white. And we saw him from a distance, and he's like, I was like, I don't know. So we walk in there. Kid's sitting there, he's crying. He's got welts all over him, boogers coming down his nose. He's probably 13 or 14, but he was a small kid. And so they're asking us what happened. We're trying to play it off. The kid's freaking out, and they're like, that's it. This bunk has been causing so many problems since he got here. We've been letting a lot of things slide. We're going to have to kick you out. Camp was about a week. This was like on a Thursday or a Friday, and then you left on Saturday. And I'm like, kick us out. I was like, where am I gonna go? They're like, well, we're gonna call your parents, and they're gonna have to come pick you up. Nefty was like, my parents don't have a phone. I was like, my parents are 600 fucking miles away. I was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck we're gonna do here. So we're sitting there, and they're like just talking amongst themselves, and our counselor walks in, and he's like, what happened? So they take him in privately, and they talk to him, and I guess he just gave them a really good speech, because he came out, he was like, you two are idiots. And we're like, what? And they were like, I made it so you didn't get kicked out, because what are you going to do, idiot? Because your family's 600 miles away, but you have to do a lot of things. And we're like, okay, like what? And we had to clean basically like all the kids would like meet for like a church service in this one area. We had to clean that. We had to clean the cafeteria. We had to be on our best behavior. No incidences, blah, blah, blah. The funny thing was we cleaned the cafeteria up at night. And it was probably like 10 or 11. We were up there like, man, this sucks. All of a sudden, Luke, John, and a couple more kids from our bunk walk in. We're like, what the fuck are y'all doing? And they're like, oh, we got in trouble. They said we were being too loud. And I was like, oh, all right, grab a broom. We're just sweeping here. Like 10 minutes later, the bunnies come in there, and we're like, what the fuck are y'all doing? They're like, oh, we got in trouble. We were cutting up too much. I was like, word, this worked out really well. So it was it was a very funny thing. It was a very funny story. And here's the kicker. Here's the absolute kicker. The kid that we beat up, his name was Cello. He was probably 5'6". And he wore glasses. And he had like a fade and like a curly up top. Before that was popular. That's what he wears. Fast forward, 14 years, let's say 20. I was 20. Yeah, let's fast forward about that time. I'm in my late 20s. My cousin, she calls me and we're talking. She's like, oh yeah, I've been dating this guy. I was like, oh word. I was like, that's cool. I was like, what's his name? She was like, Cello. I was like, come again? And she's like, what? I was like, is he like 5'6", a little shorter than you? She's like, yeah. I was like, you got glasses, don't he? You know, Puerto Rican kid. She's like, yeah. I was like, kind of dark skinned Puerto Rican. Yeah. I was like, you still got that fade and that curly up top? And she's like, how the fuck do you know all this? I was like, because I know who that motherfucker is. Put him on the phone. So she's like, no, I'm not putting him on the phone. How do you know him? I was like, ask him about summer camp and a white dude and a Puerto Rican dude and the bathroom there. And I could just hear that motherfucker in the back just start cracking up laughing. He was like, yo, I'm so sorry about that, man. I was just, I was trying to be tough or whatever, but oh, I'm so sorry about that. And I was like, what a fucking small world. Like, how fucking random is that? So yeah, that's the story. And that's the story about getting kicked out of the Christian summer camp. And like I said, there is a follow-up to this because we won the whole thing. Mandarin Orange won, and we got the church got a free thing to this youth conference in downtown Springfield, Massachusetts, where they were putting us in a hotel, and like, it was a really nice ass hotel. It was like a 2 or 3 day thing. I ended up coming up for that, and they were like, you need to be on your best behavior. I was like, yes, sir. Within 2 hours of being up there, I already got in trouble. There was a whole big situation. Bad. Very bad. The actual youth pastor was scolding me and yelling at me. But there was a bit of profiling in it as well, because of the incident that I got blamed for, which I actually didn't do. So that's a story for another day. Maybe I'll tell it. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I'm going to make some dinner and probably go lay in bed because I'm very tired. Enjoy. Good night.